My name is Sarah. I am 34 years old, and I never thought the people I protected would be the architects of my destruction. It was the night of my birthday party, the house buzzing with laughter and the clinking of champagne glasses. I walked toward the dim hallway, my heart full of gratitude. But muffled whispers pulled me toward the study. I pushed the heavy oak door open a fraction, and my universe violently collapsed. There, bathed in the pale moonlight, was my husband, Mark, his hands aggressively tangled in the hair of my younger sister, Emily. They were kissing. Not a drunken mistake, but a deep, desperate kiss that spoke of hidden nights. My breath vanished, a suffocating wave of betrayal washing over me. I stumbled backward, the image burning into my retinas. But what I didn't know then was that the kiss was merely the surface of a darker abyss, and the real devastation would come days later when I unearthed two carefully hidden, handwritten letters that made me... Before I take you down this dark road of shattered trust and the chilling secrets that were buried right under my nose, I want to take a brief moment to ask you something. From which city or state of our country are you listening to my story today? I always find a strange sense of comfort knowing where my words are reaching, realizing that I am not just shouting into an empty void, but connecting with real people who might understand this pain. Please let me know in the comments, because knowing you are out there gives me the strength to speak my truth. Now, to truly make you understand the sheer magnitude of the betrayal I witnessed in that dark study, I have to take you back to how this intricate web of lies even began to spin. You need to understand who Mark and Emily were to me, and how deeply I had anchored my existence to them before everything I knew was violently ripped away. Emily was 29, 5 years my junior, and always the chaotic whirlwind to my steady calm. Since our mother passed, I became her protector and safety net. I paid her rent, held her through breakups, and never asked for anything. My love was blind, oblivious to the venomous resentment she harbored toward my stability. Then there was my husband, Mark, 36 years old, an architect whose charming smile felt like the reward for my struggles. We met 7 years ago, and he swept me off my feet with promises of a secure future.
Our wedding was a dream. Mark integrated flawlessly, playing the supportive brother-in-law to Emily with an ease that brought tears of gratitude to my eyes. I thought I had struck gold, unaware that they were already perfectly aligned in their silent, shared jealousy of the successful, wealthy life I had painstakingly built from the ground up for myself. Our life together seemed picture-perfect from the outside, living in a beautiful suburban home that I had largely financed through my promotions, hosting Sunday dinners and planning our future. But behind closed doors, a silent, agonizing grief was slowly suffocating our marriage. We had been trying to have a baby for 4 agonizing years. Month after month, the negative pregnancy tests piled up, each one a sharp physical blow to my heart.
The endless doctor appointments, the invasive fertility treatments, the hormonal injections that left me bruised and emotionally volatile, it was a nightmare that I navigated with Mark quietly holding my hand, or so I thought. I poured all my energy into trying to give him a child, drowning in a deep sense of inadequacy, unaware that his comforting words were hollow, masking a sinister reality unfolding in the shadows of my own seemingly perfect home. The twisted irony peaked 4 years ago when Emily announced she was pregnant. She wept on my couch, claiming it was an accident from a brief fling with a vanished stranger. My own womb empty, I felt a bizarre mix of jealousy and fierce protectiveness. I swallowed my tears and promised Mark and I would be there. I furnished the nursery, attended ultrasounds, and held her hand when my nephew Leo was born. Leo became the center of my universe. Mark was incredibly involved, fixing Emily's apartment and spending hours playing with Leo on our living room floor. I thought it was the most beautiful, selfless thing. I watched them together, my heart swelling with love, whispering prayers of thanks for a husband who loved my family as his own. The profound level of my blindness still haunts my waking hours, as I completely failed to see the terrifying truth right in front of my very own eyes. This delicate, manufactured illusion of our perfect blended family continued flawlessly until the night of my 34th birthday. I had decided to throw a large backyard party to celebrate my recent promotion to senior partner at my firm. It was a milestone I had fought tooth and nail for, working 80-hour weeks, sacrificing sleep and sanity. I wanted to celebrate surrounded by the people I loved most. I had spent weeks planning the event, hiring a caterer, setting up beautiful floral arrangements, and ensuring that everyone, especially Mark and Emily, had a wonderful time. Little Leo was running around the yard chasing the neighbor's dog, while Mark manned the grill and Emily chatted with my friends. The atmosphere was intoxicatingly happy. I remember standing by the patio door, looking out at the scene, feeling an overwhelming sense of peace before the storm arrived. As the evening progressed and the sky turned a deep, inky purple, the crowd began to thin. The music was turned down and a comfortable, relaxed vibe settled over the remaining guests. That was when I went inside to wash my hands and noticed that neither Mark nor Emily were in the yard. I thought nothing of it at first, assuming Mark was grabbing more ice and Emily was checking on a now sleeping Leo in the guest bedroom. But then I heard the quiet, urgent rustling from Mark's home office. I walked down the hall, expecting to ask them to bring out the leftover cake. Instead, I opened the door to my own personal hell. I saw the kiss, the way his hands gripped her waist, the way she leaned into him with a hungry familiarity that made my stomach violently churn. This was not a sudden lapse in judgment. This was a practiced, comfortable intimacy that shattered my entire reality. I didn't scream. I didn't throw a glass or tear them apart. The shock was so profoundly deep, so neurologically paralyzing, that my brain simply severed the connection to my vocal cords. I stepped back, my foot grazing the thick hallway runner, and the slight friction sound was enough to make Mark tear his face away from my sister. The look of sheer, unadulterated panic that washed over his face is permanently etched into my memory. Emily gasped, her hands flying to her mouth, her eyes wide like a cornered animal. For 3 agonizing seconds, no one breathed. The silence in that hallway was heavier than a collapsed star. I turned around and walked away. I walked straight out the front door, leaving my own birthday party, my own house, my own life. I got into my car, locked the doors, and drove aimlessly into the dark, a silent scream tearing through my chest as my world burned. I checked into a cheap, sterile motel on the edge of the highway, my phone vibrating endlessly with calls and texts from Mark. When morning finally broke, painting the dingy motel walls with a sickly yellow light, I answered his call. His voice was frantic, dripping with a sickeningly sweet desperation. He swore it was a mistake. He blamed the alcohol. He blamed the stress of his upcoming architectural deadlines. He even subtly tried to blame me, suggesting that my recent obsession with work had left him feeling isolated. He claimed Emily had tripped, that he caught her, and that in a moment of drunken confusion, their lips met for a split second before I walked in. It was a pathetic, insulting lie, a desperate attempt to gaslight me into doubting the crystal-clear reality my own eyes had witnessed. But a tiny, broken part of my soul wanted to believe his ridiculous, fragile lies. I needed an anchor, someone completely removed from the toxic web of my family. I called my best friend, Jessica. She was 34, a sharp, no-nonsense criminal defense attorney who had known me since our freshman year of college. We met at a quiet diner on the outskirts of town. I sat in the vinyl booth, my eyes swollen, my hands shaking as I choked out the words. I told her what I saw, and I told her Mark's ridiculous excuse. Jessica didn't offer empty platitudes. She didn't tell me everything would be okay. She looked at me with a fierce, cold clarity and said, "Sarah, men don't accidentally swallow someone's face because they are stressed about a deadline. That was a lover's kiss. You need to go back to that house. Not to forgive him, but to gather every piece of financial and personal evidence. Her cold logic was exactly what my hysterical, shattered brain truly needed. I drove back to my house the next day when I knew Mark would be at his firm. The house, usually a sanctuary of warmth and comfort, now felt like an alien landscape, a crime scene where my future had been brutally murdered. The silence was deafening. I bypassed our bedroom and walked straight into his home office, the very room where the betrayal had occurred. The faint scent of Emily's cheap vanilla perfume still lingered in the air, a sickening ghost haunting my space. I locked the door behind me and began a methodical, cold-blooded search. I went through his filing cabinets, his desk drawers, checking for unusual bank statements, hidden credit cards, or anything that could prove Jessica's theory that this was a long-term affair. I was fueled by a hyper-focused robotic energy, suppressing the agonizing emotional pain beneath a thick layer of investigative, cold determination. After an hour of finding nothing but old blueprints and tax returns, my frustration boiled over. I opened the bottom drawer of his heavy mahogany desk, noticing a false bottom that I had never seen before. I grabbed a letter opener, wedged it under the thin wooden panel, and popped it out. Beneath it lay a small, beautifully carved wooden box. My hands trembled violently as I reached in and pulled it out. The wood was smooth, worn from being handled frequently. I sat down on the floor, the cold hardwood seeping into my bones, and slowly opened the brass latch. Inside lay a stack of photographs, a dried rose, and 2 thick folded letters. The first photograph I saw made the breath leave my body in a harsh wheeze. It was a picture of Mark and Emily, taken on a beach. Emily was sitting on Mark's lap, looking deeply in love. The timestamp on the back was from 5 years ago. A cold, terrifying numbness spread from my chest to my extremities. I picked up the first letter, recognizing Mark's sharp, precise architectural handwriting immediately. It was dated 3 days before our wedding. I unfolded the heavy paper, my eyes scanning the words that would forever alter the trajectory of my existence. "My dearest Emily," it began. "Walking down the aisle to marry your sister will be the hardest performance of my life. You know I only chose Sarah because she provides the stability and financial security we desperately need to build our future. She is the bank, Emily, but you are the fire. I promise you, as soon as her investments mature and the house is fully paid off, I will orchestrate the divorce. Be patient, my love. Every time I touch her, I close my eyes and pretend it is you." I dropped the paper to the floor as if it were coated in pure burning acid. I thought the pain couldn't possibly plunge any deeper. I thought I had hit the absolute bedrock of human suffering. But my trembling fingers reached into the box and pulled out the second letter. This one was written on Emily's pale pink stationery, the handwriting loopy and chaotic. It was dated just 4 years ago, right around the time she had come to my house sobbing about her accidental pregnancy. The room started to spin. A high-pitched ringing echoed in my ears as I forced my eyes to focus on her words. "Mark," the letter read, "I went to the doctor today. The news is positive. I am pregnant. Our baby is finally happening. I know we can't tell Sarah the truth yet. It would ruin the financial plan. I will tell her it was a random hookup. She is so desperate for a child, she will jump at the chance to help raise him while funding our son's entire life without ever knowing." The letters slipped from my numb fingers, fluttering gently to the floor like dead leaves. Leo. Sweet, innocent, bright-eyed Leo. He wasn't the product of a tragic mistake. He was the physical manifestation of my husband and my sister's monstrous, calculated betrayal. My nephew was my stepson. While I was enduring the physical and emotional torture of fertility treatments, weeping in bathroom stalls over negative tests, my husband was actively creating a family with my sister, using my money, my home, and my endless well of unconditional love to fund and shelter their secret life. The magnitude of the deception was so vast, so incredibly evil, that it transcended anger. I didn't feel rage in that moment. I felt an icy, terrifying void. The Sarah who loved her sister, the Sarah who adored her husband, died right there on the floor of that office. A cold, ruthless survivor was born. I didn't confront them immediately. I knew that if I exploded now, they would scramble, hide assets, and try to manipulate the narrative. I carefully folded the letters, placed them back in the wooden box, and put the box in my purse. I walked out of the house and drove straight to Jessica's law firm. When I walked into her sleek office, she took one look at my face and canceled all her afternoon appointments. I handed her the letters. I watched as her stoic demeanor crumbled, her eyes widening in absolute horror as she read the poisonous words. When she looked up, her jaw was set in granite. "We are going to destroy them, Sarah," she whispered, her voice laced with a dangerous, protective fury. "Legally, financially, and completely. They get absolutely nothing. We are going to make sure they walk away from your life with exactly what they brought into it. Absolutely nothing at all." For the next 3 weeks, I put on the greatest acting performance of my entire life. I moved back into the house, telling Mark that I needed time to process the kiss, but was willing to try couples counseling. The relief on his face was nauseating. He played the role of the remorseful, loving husband perfectly, entirely unaware that the financial ground beneath him was crumbling. Behind his back, Jessica and I were executing a brutal, flawless legal strategy. Because I had purchased the house before our marriage and kept the deed solely in my name, protecting my assets was easier than I feared. I filed for divorce citing egregious infidelity, attaching copies of the letters to the court documents. I also contacted my firm's legal team to ensure Mark couldn't touch a single dime of my retirement or investment portfolios. I systematically cut off his financial oxygen with absolute precision. When the legal traps were set and divorce papers finalized, I invited Emily for Sunday brunch, claiming I wanted to clear the air. She arrived looking guilty, but eager to resume her parasitic role. Mark nervously made coffee while Leo played outside. I waited until Emily was seated and Mark stood by the fireplace. The atmosphere was tense, a fragile glass house waiting for a stone. I pulled the carved wooden box from my bag and placed it on the glass table. Mark's face drained of color, his coffee mug shattering loudly against the hearth. Emily gasped as her eyes locked onto the box. "I found your retirement plan, Mark," I said, my voice eerily calm. "And Emily, I found your confession about Leo." I didn't yell. "The house is in my name, the accounts are frozen. Jessica is filing the divorce tomorrow, and you are both evicted from my life immediately. You get absolutely nothing." Mark fell to his knees, literally crawling across the rug, desperately claiming he truly loved me now. It was a sickening display of a coward losing his meal ticket. Emily hyperventilated, trying to use Leo as a shield. "Don't mention his name," I snapped, lethal fury bleeding through. "You used my deepest pain to fund your secret family. Pack your bags. You have 1 hour before I call the police." They left, Mark dragging suitcases and Emily carrying a crying Leo, a sight that fractured my heart, but I knew I couldn't save him without destroying myself. Without my financial backing, their toxic romance crumbled. Mark lost his job, and Emily was forced to move in with a distant aunt, taking Leo with her. My legal victory was absolute. The stress of poverty destroyed them, leaving them with exactly the miserable, pathetic lives they truly deserved for their monstrous betrayal of my trust. It has been 3 years since that explosive Sunday morning. I sold the house, as the memories were simply too toxic to live with, and I bought a beautiful, modern penthouse downtown. I poured my energy into my career, becoming the youngest managing partner in my firm's history. The pain of losing Leo still aches on quiet nights, a dull phantom pain of a child who was never truly mine. But I have found profound peace in my absolute freedom. I learned the hardest way imaginable that sometimes the most venomous snakes are the ones we invite into our own gardens, the ones we warm by our own fires.
Trust is a beautiful gift, but blind trust is a dangerous weapon you hand directly to your enemies. Would you have been able to walk away from the child you helped raise? Or would you do the same in my place to save your own sanity and protect your future? Until the next story.